Recording is on all set and we're ready to go. Hi, everybody. Thanks for hanging out. My name is Nolan. I run this monthly meetup called SAC Interactive. We meet every month on the third Wednesday here in Zoom at the moment, where we talk about all things web and mobile development related. The actual technology we use changes from month to month, but it's something to do with building websites or web apps or mobile apps. It's always free. It's always open to everyone who wants to join us. We are always looking for ideas on topics to cover. So if you have a topic in the web mobile development space you'd like to see a presentation on, please message me and let me know. We'll add it to the list. And also, if you would like to give a presentation yourself on some topic in that area, please message me and we'll get you on the calendar. And with that, we have one of my favorite presenters and a friend of mine that I met several years ago when we both spoke at the same conference in Louisiana, I believe. We're out there, yeah, in Louisiana. Scott McAllister. Thanks very much for joining us again, Scott. And with that, the floor is yours, my friend. Take it away.
Thank you very much, sir. I'm actually going to digress for just a second. I went back to Louisiana just a couple of months ago to that very same neighborhood.
Oh, yeah?
In a hotel that was right by that building where you and I spoke.
Nice,
so
but but did you have a 4-hour dinner discussion with us and Jessica about Jimmy Eat World and punk rock bands?
I did not.
Okay.
That was severely missing from that trip.
Right.
Completely. But the humidity and heat, that was there.
Of course.
Yeah. So, all right. Anyway, so thank you all for joining us today. I'm going to share my screen. Make sure we have that one there. Everyone see that okay?
Looks good.
Great. And then before we get started, just in the chat, how many folks are familiar with webhooks, like quite familiar with webhooks? Or how would you rate your familiarity with webhooks? And that way it gives me an idea of where to start. And then webhook security would be the next topic. How experienced are you with webhook security? So medium familiar, Nolan, good. Good. Anyone else? Are we brand new to webhooks? Also medium familiar with security. Good, good. Newish, great. Moderate, awesome. Moderate. Okay, cool. So yeah, what I'll do is I'll kind of start with a primer of webhooks, real, just probably high level. You have a pretty good idea, just to give us all a sense for where to begin. And then hopefully, as I go through the different demos and the different explanations, if anything is unclear, just again, as Nolan mentioned, just raise your hand or just pop on or just pop in the chat. I'm watching the chat here off to the side. So let me know if you have any questions. Happy to help you all out today. But what we're going to be talking about is simple ways to make webhook security better. Most of the content that I'll be sharing is available on a website called webhooks.fyi. So if you have to drop off or want to come back and say, oh, wait, what was Scott talking about? He's talking about these different methods on how to do security with webhooks. It's all here in webhooks.fyi. Webhooks.fyi is a website that we created here at ngrok, where I work. And it's a resource for the community. It's a place that we've gathered information of a variety of webhook providers and how they do security and also how they do webhook delivery. If you look at this list of providers, if you go to webhooks.fyi and see the list of providers and see that your webhooks, if you provide webhooks, are not there, or if there's a provider you know of that isn't in the list, we would love to know that so that we can continually build on this list to provide essentially a way for folks to see how other people and other organizations are doing webhooks, how they're producing them, how they're securing them, how they're consuming them. And so it's just a resource to help people have an idea on what to do with webhooks and how to make them better and how to better consume them and be better, just make the web a better place, right? That's really what it's basically meant to share that information. So the details are there. We're going to go over a few of the main topics today, but again, you can find more details there. And please let us know if there are additions that could be made. So you could either make the pull request or just reach out to me, and I can dig into that and get the details in there as well. So webhooks are a type of HTTP request. But before we get into that, I actually have a few requests for you as the audience. Normally, when I'm giving a talk, and if you've ever given a talk before and you're up there and you're on the stage, you're on the Zoom, you're looking at the people in the screen, you're thinking, yeah, I just got to check this one thing and no one will notice that I'm on my phone. Trust me, we all notice when we're on the stage when someone's staring down at their phone rather than me. However, today, I actually want you on your phone. So I'm going to need each of you to be on your phones for this presentation. There's a particular point where you're going to participate, where you're going to essentially generate webhooks for me, and then our application in our demo is going to consume those webhooks. So I'm going to need you to pull out your phones at a particular point in this presentation. Also, if you're familiar with a tool like Postman or curl, or a new one I've heard recently called HTTP Pi. Is it HTTP Pi or HTTP Pi? I don't know. But super rad. It's kind of an evolution of curl and making a command line HTTP tool a little bit more usable and a little bit more friendly, I think, than curl. So if you're going to use one of those command line tools, let me know. I'll have some bonus for you at the end if you can show me that you participated with that. And then also, if you're on the socials and you like what you hear something interesting and you want to tweet about it, if you could also tag my employer, that would be appreciated. That way they know that I'm out there doing good things and letting people know of good information about various things. Today it's about webhook security, but we will be talking a little bit about ngrok and how it integrates with that as well. So webhooks, as I mentioned, HTTP requests. Now, a regular HTTP request is you as a client, maybe a web browser or a phone, makes a request to a server, and that server sends a message to you. Did I hear something? Someone have a question? Okay, cool. And so that server sends that response to you as in a message, and then you as the client or consumer receives that. The difference is with a webhook, webhooks are a situation where you're saying, hey, I need to know when something happens pretty much now, like instantaneously, and I need to act upon that. So how about I'll just tell you where to send those requests. I'm going to give you an address, and then can you just send a post to that address whenever there's something new or there's an update I need to act on? And the provider will be like, oh yeah, I can do that. And so that's where we have webhooks, so that we can get instantly notified of things like, say, if an incident happens. Say if you have like pager duty. Anyone have pager duty or on call right now? Right? If you're on call and you have to like get notified that something's broken, that's a webhook coming to your phone. Or if you are in need of like knowing when a pull request happens, or when an issue is created, or in our case, we're going to look at text messages today. Who here is familiar with Twilio? Anyone familiar with Twilio? Okay. Got a couple of hands. There we go. So Twilio is, I'm going to pop out here. Twilio is a service that allows you to programmatically manipulate or work with phone calls and text messages. And one of the things that they do is you can have a phone number with Twilio where you can receive calls, make calls, receive text messages, send text messages. So I have a phone number set up with Twilio to receive text messages. Twilio gives me the opportunity to subscribe to those text messages as webhooks. So when a text message comes into that phone number, then I'm going to receive a webhook being pushed to a particular address. So in this case, when I receive a message, when a message comes in, Twilio is going to send a webhook. They're going to send an HTTP post right here, HTTP post as a webhook to the address that I give them. So the address we're going to use today is sackinteractive.ngrok.dev. That way, whenever there's a message that comes into my Twilio account, it's going to send a webhook to that application, or at least to that endpoint. All right, so the webhook is separate from the text message. The text message comes into Twilio, and then there's a webhook that Twilio sends once it receives that text message. All right, so that is where we're going to have our demo today. However, let's talk a little bit about why webhooks. So we're going to come here, come back to that, come back to full screen. Good. So why webhooks? Well, like I was mentioning before, we need to be notified of things in real time. We need to be able to act on things, not sit there and constantly asking a server, hey, is there an update? Hey, is there an update? We want the server to let us know that there's an update. But webhooks are also, at least other advantages of webhooks are things like it's on a simple protocol, one that we're already using for most of the web. So it's running on HTTP. They're going to be sent with a payload that most of us are already using as well, with JSON. There's some still in XML, but JSON is generally what you're seeing today, and the ones we'll be seeing today will be sent with JSON. But XML still definitely has a place, but it's still a format that is consumable for you. You don't have to know what kind of stack they have on their end. It's stack agnostic. I don't care what tech stack they have. Nolan and I were talking about that at the beginning of the call, right? So different places have different tech stacks for their needs. I don't care if it's a .NET shop that's sending me something, or a Java shop, or a Cold Fusion shop, or a PHP. As long as I'm receiving that webhook, it's going to come in as JSON or XML, and I can consume it however I want. I can essentially understand the state of what the information that I'm receiving from the server. So in our case, let's say from Twilio, I can understand the state of my messages. When I receive a text message, I know that there's a new one because I'm going to receive it as a webhook. Webhooks are also super easy to spoof and compromise. No, that's not right. Let's say they're actually, you don't want to tell your boss that. You want to say something more like they're super easy to test and to mock. We'll look at that here in just a second. All right. So what we're going to do is we have this phone number right here, but it's not quite ready yet. Not quite ready because we need to have an application. So I'm going to pop this out here. We'll show you that phone number again in a second. I have an application right here. I'm hoping the resolution is good enough. Let me know if that's not big enough. Good? Good. Okay, cool. Nolan gives me the thumbs up. So I'm thinking it's good. I think Kevin did too. So this super simple application, just an endpoint, has a star on it. So that way it's going to receive anything that it receives. It's just going to output what I've got. We're going to run it on port 3000. And so I'm going to pop out of this. Here's my terminal. I'm going to have a split view here so that we can see what's going on in two different processes. So here on the left, I'm going to say node app.js. That was our application. And we have our application running on port 3000, which is fine and dandy, but it's running on localhost port 3000. And webhooks need to be able to hit a publicly addressable spot, as publicly addressable endpoint. So to solve that problem, so for this application that's running on my laptop, this is where ngrok comes in. So that's where the ngrok angle comes in on this particular conversation, where I can say ngrok HTTP 3000, and then we told the application, we told Twilio that it's going to be on SAC interactive div.ngrok.dev. So I'm going to come here. Now my application is online. You could make a post to that right now, but we're not going to. What we're going to do is we're going to actually take our phone number that we have here, right there. We'll just leave that on screen. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, Kevin. That would have been super awkward. 3000. Now we're running. Good stuff. Good stuff. Love it when people help me. And the audience is my safety net. All right. So we have our application. If you have a phone, this is a chance for you to pull out your phone. And I need you to send a text message to this particular number. It's not going into any ngrok anything, by the way. I should probably say that. We're not saving. This isn't passing through. The phone, your phone number is not passing into ngrok in any sort of way that collects it for you or for us or anything. But what this is doing is it's just going to send a text message that's going to hit our application. Sweet. So we have some. All right. So we have a couple of. We have one coming in. Awesome. From someone who has a phone number from Las Vegas. Great. They said hello there. That's awesome. I'm also going to send one. Pull out my phone. Okay, we'll be like, hi from Washington. By the way, I'm connecting in from North Bend, Washington. So it's beautiful and a little muggy today. So San Francisco, good. There, this one says testing 1, 2, 3. And then another one says, oh, I know who that's from. Static Prevails, Clarity Futures. Who could that be? Who could that be? Maybe Bleed American? Huh? Surviving, I think is a new one. Yeah, nice Jimmy Eat World reference there. So it's only based on the area code since I'm definitely not in Vegas. Yeah. That particular I think is only based on where the phone number was registered. So like my phone number, if you look at mine, right, hi from Washington, it says Utah right there, Logan, Utah, because that's where I was when I created this phone number, but I actually currently live in North Bend, Washington. And so that's, So this is information, this is metadata that Twilio is collecting, or the Twilio understands apparently, from that text message. And so the text message comes in and this is all that stuff that they know about whatever that message is coming in. But pretty simple, right? So to get this set up, just had to set up a subscription on Twilio as far as saying, hey, Twilio, send messages, send me a notification, essentially, do an HTTP post to my application. My application received that webhook, and now we have those webhooks here. Right. So with that, let's go there. Now, super easy, right? To get those webhooks coming in. It was able to send us messages. Our application sends a response that says, okay, thanks for the message, sort of thing. But the question is that secure? Is that something that we know? How do we know that message is coming from Twilio? How do we know that HTTP post is coming in from the right place? There's a few different risks that are inherent with webhooks. The first is interception. You could have a person in the middle sort of attack where they could intercept your particular message and then do whatever they want with it. They can essentially impersonate the provider. They could also modify and manipulate the messages that are coming through. And then they could also do something called a replay attack, where they essentially intercept it and then they start pounding you with the message over and over and over until essentially you fall over, sort of thing. So that's not really a great situation to be in. But so how do we know? So if we have, this is a question that you have for your application. My application will output pretty much anything. So now if I take that phone number and I send text messages to that phone number, I'll still keep receiving messages. But if I also maybe take a message or take oh, that's not what I wanted. Oops, my bad. So we're going to take this. What would we say? SAC interactive ngrok.dev. Okay. We're going to send posts to remove link. Yeah. To SAC interactive ngrok.dev. So I'm going to pop out of here. I'm going to go to Postman. And in Postman, I have it set up to send a post to sackinteractive.ngrok.dev. I'm going to have a JSON body to look like the body here. In fact, I'll even take it one step farther. I'm going to come over here and I'm going to say like this. I'm just going to grab all that, make it look like it's coming in. But rather than static prevails, futures, totally a text message. Let's see. Damaged. No one will get that reference. All right. So we'll do this here. I hit my send. It says, thanks for the message. We get a 200. We go back to our application. And I receive a message that's identical, practically identical to my other message here. Yeah, the headers might be different. No, the headers really aren't that different. I mean, they are a little bit. They're a little different. But to our application, we don't know. We don't know that this one came in from Twilio. We don't know that this one came in from Postman. So from a different source that we were not watching for. So what we want to talk about is some different ideas as how we can make sure that this happens. Among other things, we want to make sure that we can understand that we're receiving a message from the source that we're listening to. All right, let's pop here. So there's a few different methods I want to talk about. The first one is verifying that not only that you are who you say you are, but also that the provider knows that you as a consumer have control over wherever you're asking them to send a webhook. So I told Twilio that, hey, send a webhook to this endpoint. Send it to, and I could give it whatever address it wants. I could say, send it to google.com, and Twilio would send it there. But there's some webhook providers that are not real excited about sending it to a place that you don't control. One of those is a place called Smartsheet. And so Smartsheet has or uses something called one-time verification. And this is how it works. When you create a webhook, you can't do it through the UI like we did with Twilio. You actually do it through the API. You make a post request to the webhooks endpoint, and you get a response that says, hey, great, here's your webhook ID, but it's going to be enabled. The enabled flag is going to be set to false, and the status is going to be not yet verified. So you can't receive webhooks here just yet. You need to do another step where you now take that ID that you received from Smartsheet and say, all right, I'm going to now make a put request where I want to update the webhook. And I'm going to say, here, do this, send a put request to webhooks / and then the ID. And then you're going to send enabled equals to true. And then when Smartsheet receives that, it says, great, that's nice. So I know that you're serious about this webhook. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to send a verification request, but I'm not going to send it back to you where you're making the request for the webhooks. I'm going to send it to where you told me to send the webhook originally. Probably should have mentioned that. So in step 1, you told Smartsheet saying, hey, I want a webhook. I want you to send it to this particular place, this subscriber callback URL. And so Smartsheet is now going to send a request to that subscriber URL. And then it's going to resend it with a header for a Smartsheet hook challenge. That Smartsheet hook challenge is going to be received by that endpoint where it's going to be receiving the webhooks. Then it's going to send a response back to Smartsheet, passing that challenge back to basically say, yep, I see it, and here's the challenge back. I totally have control over this endpoint as well. And then Smartsheet says, great, we're going to enable the webhook, and everything's good. Now remember, there's a few things that are happening here. One, Smartsheet sees that you have control over that endpoint. And how does it know that you do? It's because you have to use your API access token. That same access token that you use to create the webhook, you also have to use to make the call from your callback URL. So your API access token is making a call from the callback URL with that same token to basically say, I am who I say I am, I promise. And Smartsheet says, that's great. So in that case, it will start sending webhooks to you, and you have essentially a trusted relationship between you and the provider, in this case, Smartsheet. Now, it's a little bit of a misnomer that it's a one-time verification. I believe Smartsheet makes you do this again every 300 or 3,000 or some number of webhooks. They say they're going to run you through this whole process again. So you have to check for that particular error code and then kind of trigger that whole different process yet again when you're receiving those webhooks. Smartsheet's not the only one that does this. Adobe Sign, OneDrive, Okta, there are other examples that use this particular type of verification. It's great because it verifies who you are. It verifies who controls the destination of where they are. It's pretty complex, right? I mean, that's a lot of work to get a webhook. When before, with something like Twilio, I literally put an address in a web form and I was done, rather than making multiple API calls back to the provider, and then continually checking. So pluses and minuses there. Now we're going to get into the verification of verifying you as the consumer. I'm going to verify that the provider is actually sending me the message that I'm receiving, that I know that it's coming from the provider, that it's coming from Twilio in our case, rather than from Postman or for some middle actor in the middle, in between, impersonating Twilio. So we're going to start out super basic as far as what you can do or what can be done. And then we're going to progressively get a little bit more and more complex as far as the solution that you can have in place for that webhook. Now, I should mention this, and I'll mention it again, but it's a point to be remembered that all of these security methods have to be provided by the provider. The provider has to be able to support them. So you as a consumer need to be able to either demand it from that provider or check the provider's documentation to make sure that they have the necessary security measures in place so that you can make sure that you have a good relationship with them and a relationship with that webhook. So that first way of verifying the provider is the shared secret. So a shared secret in its most bare form is, I'm going to move that zoomness because the zoomness was right on top of everything for me. All right. So a shared secret is essentially what it means. You have a provider that creates a webhook message. They add a shared secret. They pass it over to the listener. The listener verifies that shared secret and then says, great. And they send a response back. In this case, it's super simple. It's probably a header that's coming through, but the caveat is it's probably as a header in plain text. So it's very low in complexity, but you don't have any idea if the message that's being sent is the same when it started. So you could say that, okay, this message came from a place that has the shared secret, but was the message intercepted and then manipulated before it got to me? So in that case, we don't have that. Folks that use this, Datadog, DocuSign, VMware, are some examples of folks that use shared secret. Making things a little bit more secure, a little bit more complex too, is something called hash-based message authentication, or HMAC, is the common acronym for hash-based message authentication. Similar idea as shared secret. However, rather than just passing the shared secret as a header, what it does is they create the webhook message, they generate a hash of the shared secret and the message body, and then they pass that over to the listener. And the listener says, hey, great, I'm going to take this, I'm going to generate a signature hash of the message body and the message secret that we have, validate it, and then process my webhook. That way I can now understand that this is coming from my source and the message wasn't tampered with. This is nice because it has secret keys that are not in the webhook notification, because the key's not there anymore, because the listener and the provider, they both have a shared understanding that the key exists and which key that they're using, but they don't have to pass the key. They just have to encrypt and create a hash with the key and the message body, and then they have to be able to essentially decrypt it at the end. The downside of this is it's a little bit more complex than shared secret or no secret or no security at all. However, it's nice because you can at least know the integrity of your message and of your provider as well. A lot of folks use this one: GitHub, Shopify, Slack, Twilio, super popular way of getting your messages secured. Now, asymmetric keys is a similar idea, except for now, rather than having a shared secret, you actually have a public-private key situation. So the provider has a private key and the listener has a public key, and it will generate a hash using the private key and the message body. And then when the listener receives it, they're able to essentially validate the signature hash using the public key, and then make sure that the message is coming in, again, from the source and also that your message is valid and hasn't been tampered with. In this case, it extends HMAC just a little bit, makes it a little bit harder to break or to crack. However, again, it just keeps adding the complexity. So you start after asking yourself, is HMAC enough, or do we need to go the one step further and take asymmetric keys? Completely up to you, or also up to your provider. Folks like PayPal and SendGrid, this is the way that they provide security. And so it's something that they decided needs to take one step further. Things like, I mean, PayPal seems to be a place that would need to be fairly secure. You know, it's dealing with money and things. All right, so now we move into mutual TLS. This one gets interesting because TLS, because you have TLS and then you have mutual TLS. TLS is essentially where it requires a digital certificate from the server, right? So you have a certificate that's provided by a certificate registrar or a certificate authority that is trusted across the industry. It's generated and then has public-private keys based on that certificate. With that, the TLS handshake that happens, you have a client, you have a server. The server presents the certificate to the client verifies that certificate, generates a random string, passes it back to the server, who encrypts with a public key, and then passes it back to the client, decrypts the message with a private key, and then there's a secret string used to generate a session key, which is used when the whole conversation keeps going. That's just TLS. This is validating to the client that the server is who they say they are. However, in mutual TLS, you actually have both sides wanting to validate the identity of the other. So you have the server wanting to validate the client and the client also wanting to validate the server, hence the term mutual TLS. So in this case, you have the client, which is you as a listener. You pass the message to the server. The server says hello. Then the client says, all right, I wanted to verify your certificate. And they send it over to the server. And the server's like, that's nice. I also want to see your certificate, Mr. Client, or Mr. or Mrs. Client. And so the client also passes over the certificate, passes their certificate over to the server. The server passes their certificate over to the client. They validate each other. Then you have the client and server. They exchange crypto keys. And then they have a connection with one another where they say, I trust you now. And the server says, I trust you now. Before this interaction, there was zero trust. The server doesn't trust the client doesn't trust the server. Zero trust is a type of security that is quite popular these days because we need to make sure that our various systems and our various services are secure and that we're talking to who we think we're talking to. And so in this case with MTLS, while much more complex, it is definitely a way to make it so that you have a zero trust relationship with one another until you make this complex set of steps go through and make a connection between the two. Once you have that handshake initiated with mutual TLS, then it goes through, generates a signature hash of the message body with a shared secret, passes that over to the listener, and where the listener then validates everything and then processes that code. So mutual TLS, a lot going on there. Super, super complex. However, the message you are absolutely sure is confidential. It's not being, because you have a secure connection already created in between the client and the server, then you know that anything passed inside there will be confidential. You know that it will be valid. You know that it won't be tampered with. But then also in this situation, both the client and the server, if they get squeamish about the relationship, they can cut the access. So either side can stop the webhook relationship using MTLS because you're both verifying one another with your certificates. So there's definitely a lot more complexity there. added complexity issuing, renewing, rotating keys, public-private keys, and things of that nature. And then you're also dealing with certificates, so super complex. But if you see the examples of the folks that are using it, people like DocuSign, people like Adobe Sign, signing documents is a super secure, super confidential sort of situation. PagerDuty was the weird one for me. Full disclosure, I used to work at PagerDuty. And so like PagerDuty is like, they send you webhooks based on incidents, but it's like, do you need to have that much security around an incident? I mean, yes, so possibly. But I mean, if an incident happens, you gotta go act on it. You're not gonna send sensitive information through an incident, but maybe you do. Maybe people do have sensitive information that's being passed through their webhooks and through their incidents. But that one was a little weird to me. All right. This last one is data list notifications. I kind of think of this one as like security through obscurity. In this case, you have something, say, from like a Microsoft OneNote. Okay, so if you think of OneNote and you think of the object size of notes inside of OneNote, they could be huge. It could be this huge, large document. And so in this case, if there's been a change to OneNote, what they do is they send you a webhook that has a bare bones of what happened. Essentially, they'll send you an ID of the subscription that you're looking for, say the different type of changes that are happening. So you say, oh, when there is if there's additions to my note, or if there's an update to my note, or if a note is deleted or something like that, you could subscribe to each of those different actions. In theory, I don't know which actions you can specifically in OneNote. I'm using those as an example. And so, but you subscribe to that thing, you get the ID of the subscription. It tells you the time it happened. It tells you where the note was, like which note essentially that you need to work with, and then essentially what the action that occurred. If you want to know what happened, you have to make an additional API call back to that service to say, okay, they're essentially saying, hey, something happened on object XYZ. If you want to know the details of that, then you have to make an API call back to us. Another example is Smartsheet. They do that. They're kind of an online spreadsheet. And so if you can imagine a spreadsheet, and those can be pretty large objects and large documents. And so if there was a change in Smartsheet and you get a webhook, you say this cell was updated or this row was created in this sheet, you'll just get a webhook that says, here's the sheet ID. The action was a row was added. If you want to see what's in that row, then you have to make an API call back to Smartsheet to get the sheet ID and then scan it for the new row, and then you can look at the new row. The benefit for you as a consumer is that the webhooks coming across are pretty low. They're pretty small as far as the amount of data that you have to handle that's coming in. Also, if you are that provider, if you're Microsoft, if you're Smartsheet, you're sending these relatively thin payloads over to the clients, so you don't have to send massive amounts of data all at once when a webhook fires. The drawback is then the client, the listener, is going to receive that webhook, and then if they want to act on it, they're going to make an additional API call back. So it's additional work for the client, it's additional work for you as the provider, because you'll be essentially fielding or handling more of those API calls back to see if to get more information about the particular objects. So that's data list notifications. Data list notifications, they reduce security requirements because there's not anything being passed over the wire, and they also reduce traffic. But as I mentioned, it increases traffic because you're also making additional calls back and forth to say what is the additional, or what is the change that's been made. Okay. I don't see any questions in the chat. If you have any questions, let me know. Talk about a few of the to-dos for providers. If you are thinking about building webhooks and adding them to your product, some things you want to keep in mind that we've seen, especially when you look at all the different providers that we've cataloged in our research. Table stakes is HTTPS. As most of the internet is running on HTTPS, you should also be requiring your webhooks to be consumed over HTTPS, but you should definitely send them over HTTPS. It's important to document all the things, as in all the things. Don't assume much from your users because you really have no idea their in I don't want to say education level, but their experience level. And so talk about whole processes from the beginning to the end, show payloads, show what the payload should look like when you send it, what a payload is going to look like when you receive it, and also exactly how to generate tokens or how to generate the shared secret that you're going to be passing back and forth between the provider and the client. Show what it looks like when things go well, show what it looks like when things don't go well. So examples of the error messages that they could be seeing. And then gotchas, things to look out for when you're consuming webhooks from your particular environment. And so, yeah, definitely make sure you show the payloads, demonstrate the verification that happens, and then also show the entire end-to-end process, as I mentioned. That way, you can know the different paths you can take. As you saw before, Twilio, we didn't use any security before. So that is one path that you can take. But then also show the secure path that they could take. That way they understand how they can do it and what to do in their code to make sure that those things happen. And they can also see the benefits of using that type of verification. Here's something fascinating that we saw. We cataloged all these places. Now, you look at the number one type of security. As I mentioned before, HMAC, far and away the most popular way of doing things. And my take on that is that it provides enough security. It makes sure that the integrity of the message is still true. It also makes sure that the provider is still valid, right? And it's enough for most people's situation. I think that's why most providers have that available. However, look at number 2. What's the second most? Crazy, right? None. Webhook providers, 16% of the webhook providers that we researched didn't provide any type of security whatsoever. So you as users, you as consumers should have an idea of this is what I need for my webhooks for my webhooks to be consumed in my application. And so you should be asking your webhook providers, hey, why don't you have security? Why aren't these verified? How can I know that this is coming from you? So that's something to think about. All right, now for you as consumers, in addition to what I was just saying about holding providers accountable, also make sure that you're using your webhooks over HTTPS. But then if you saw before what we were doing, we had Twilio. We were using Twilio. We were using Twilio without any kind of security. What we're actually doing is this, when in reality, we should be doing at least the bare minimum and using the security that's available. All the webhook providers want to be compatible. They want to be user-friendly and super easy to use and set up and go quickly. So they let you use their webhooks without any type of verification. But you run into the risks that we've talked about today. I think what we're going to do. Yeah. So what we want to do now is I'm going to pop out of here. Before we do this, I'm going to add some verification to my webhooks. Now you can do that. There's a couple of different ways you can do this. One, you can go into your code and you can change your code to accept the webhook that is coming in and do that verification. Check for the security measure that particular provider is providing. As we saw before in the slides, Twilio uses HMAC. So HMAC is essentially using a shared secret, and then they're using that shared secret to make a hash with the shared secret and then the message body. And so what we want to do is I could put that into my code. However, I could also do something where you can already see I gave away the ending there at the top. I can using ngrok, one of the keys I can use, or one of the features I can tap into, is I can verify the webhook and say, okay, I want to verify Twilio, and then I want to verify with this secret. And then I'm going to pass in my Twilio token. This is my environment variable that I have stored on my machine, because while I like you all, I don't like you all that much. I don't want you to know what my Twilio token is, because it's my API key for my Twilio account. And that's not something I want to share with the world. So I'm going to have this here in my environment variable. And then now, if we go to SAC Interactive, I can come back here and we can send text messages. Oh, wait, I got to make sure that my app is still running. Good. So my app's still running on port 3000. I have SAC Interactive there. Okay. We're going to send a text message. If you all could do that. This is Scott's phone. That's my text message. Boom. Okay. So I see a text message coming in here. That's nice. So that still works. However, if I come over here to Postman, I'm now going to come to Postman and I'm going to say, oh, I can see the album cover and I don't even know the name because I don't like it at all. Integrity Blues. Integrity Blues. I really don't like that album at all, Nolan, like at all. So I don't know if you do, but yeah. Anyway, so totally a text message, Integrity Blues. We have this here. I send this and oh, bad request. Not going to happen. Okay. So here I can't send any text messages to, or any non-text messages coming in from any additional sources. In this case here, it's not going to happen. However, we can know, so now we can know with confidence that our application is receiving webhooks from the source that we wanted. And then we are making sure that validation happens. And then we can see that everything that we output here is actually coming from the source. And so we have that there. There's one additional thing that I will show you. And this is kind of ngrok-y. Just for a split second, if you want to take this same verification, this works in development greatly to run this process, right? In our command line, I have this here. I can run it as a command line on my terminal and then have that checking there. But if I want to push this to production, it's a little different to be running ngrok there. We could do it through something called the ngrok JavaScript SDK. The JavaScript SDK, I have that same application here, but instead I set up an ingress where I have my same domain name, and then I have webhook verification. I take my, I do with Twilio, I take it with my environment variable, and then I can have my application node app, I think, yeah, there we go, JS SDK. That's running. And so now I can continue to receive text messages. I come back here, go to my text message, and I'll say, yay, SDK surviving. Okay. Yeah, SDK surviving. I come back here to my application. And my application sees my Yay SDK surviving. So I still have my code verifying the webhook that it's coming in from Twilio, but I can now use it in production. I can take that code wherever I deploy it. It'll have that built into the code. So that is that there. Okay. We have that. We made some posts. We didn't go there. Again, thank you all for listening today. If you want to find out more about what I was talking about, there's other types of security measures that you can take. These are only just a few. Forbidden, failed webhook verification. Wait, which one?
Oh, I tried to send a post request just now.
Oh, from Postman? Yeah. So that's the 403 forbidden is what you should be seeing. For sure. Like you'll get a 400 level error. I was actually kind of curious why I got a 400 bad request. I think I did something to the message body there, or the JSON body. The 403 is what you should be seeing. But yeah, that can happen either, you can put that check inside your code using your own code, or you can use something like ngrok to do that check for you. So for sure. Cool. And so, yeah, anything else about, any additional information you want to know about webhooks, you can find it at webhooks.fyi. If you, like I mentioned before, if you know of a provider that is not listed in this particular list of webhook providers, we'd love to know about it. That way we can add them and essentially provide a catalog of providers and what the security measures that they take for the community of folks who use webhooks. That's essentially what we're trying to help. So, yeah, my name is Scott McAllister. I'm a developer advocate at ngrok. And if you want to continue the conversation, love to talk more now, or you can find me on any of the socials there. But yeah, thanks again for having me, y'all. And let me know if you have any questions.
Thank you so much, Scott. That was fantastic. I have one question for you real quick about the webhooks.fyi providers list. Stupid question. By webhook providers, you just mean any company anywhere on the planet that does anything and has a webhook as part of their feature set. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
And so the hope here, I'll come up. Yeah, I'll pop this open here. And so the hope is that we can have a collection of providers. So right here, all providers by name. And so then, yeah, so this, when they first showed me this, I started working at ngrok a little over a year ago, and they first showed me this list. I was like, is this really an exhaustive list? And they're like, well, it's all the people that we've cataloged. And so there's got to be other services that provide webhooks that aren't listed, but I can't think of them. And so, but it's interesting, right? I mean, I don't want to shame anybody, but I won't name anybody by name, but you can see some of the ones here that are, oh wait, I'm still sharing. And that don't provide any kind of webhook security at all. And so that's super fascinating. It's also fascinating because I think they would if people asked for it, right? As anybody, we all work in software, right? We do what our users want us to do. And so if our users are asking for it, it's something that we'll do. But if the users aren't asking for it, then we're going to focus on other features that they are asking for.
Yeah, I'm surprised that's a shorter list than I would have expected as well. But
I agree. I totally agree. I think there's others. I just don't. Yeah, we don't know of them.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, there's a little bit of research we have to do. You have to find out the provider and then, the type of security that they provide. Someone like Stripe, right? Stripe is going to be a situation that, they're dealing in payments. And so, I mean, they absolutely want to make sure that they are secure as well. And so you come in here and you'll see like additional information about what they provide and links to their documentation, and then SDKs and samples and things. So, I mean, yeah, Stripe definitely has a lot of security measures in place.
It looks like Todoist, I think, has a webhook.
Todoist.
Todoist, you know that one?
I heard of them, yeah.
I'll send you the.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thanks.
I'll put it in the chat. Just the real quick, poor man's web search. Like,
totally.
I used to do this all the time, so I was curious. That one popped in my head. Went, oh yeah,
that's great.
So that's one down.
We got one. We got one. Cool.
Any other questions for Scott while we got him here?
Yeah.
Either about code stuff or webhooks or apparently Jimmy Eat World, since I made one little joke in the text message thing and we ran with it for 5 or 6 inside references to the rest of the presentation.
Yeah.
Right. I'm all about music and pop culture references in presentations anytime. Like every demo I give at any conference or tech meetup or anything, all of my demo apps are always, and these are my favorite guitar players. And here's an array of punk bands or of, hip hop acts from the 80s or whatever. And like, here's I'll do the thing. And it's just so much more fun to do that than writing the word hello or the word test on the screen over and over again when you have some sort of tangible content.
I have a series of blog posts that I did where I was building an app for keeping track of your records, essentially.
Nice.
And so, yeah. Because I figured, honestly, I think there needs to be better apps out there. I mean, Discogs does a good job of like collecting them, but there's so much more that could be done that Discogs isn't really focusing on. But that's totally another story.
Right. That'll be next week. We'll come back and we'll talk about just web-based app for managing our record collections and
Right. That's
pros
right.
and cons of Discogs, who have
What
an
we-
API, so maybe they have a webhook as well.
I've been working long ago, but I started building an app working with their API.
Yeah.
I got some ideas because I think they have a great start, but I think there's an app or two that could be built off of that for sure.
Yeah. I realize why they did it, but I'm still bummed that they no longer allow you to sell, nor do they show the value of bootleg albums.
Oh,
They'll show like that they exist, but you can't actually, if you know somebody who has one in, I don't know, Idaho or whatever, you can't actually click buy this record from them anymore. It says, nope, you can't buy that one.
that's
And they
a
won't
bummer.
show prices or values or anything, which is a bummer. I get it. Like you don't want to sell illegal stuff that's being duplicated, but if
I
it's
get it.
like a live show of, Green Day, that Green Day's not actually selling on copies, but it just some kid in Chicago happened to record it and pressed 500 of them on vinyl. I don't feel like I'm taking money away from Green Day if I buy this kid's record, but I know that the lawyers and the marketing companies and all that would disagree with me, but
Their
it's up to
label
Discogs
does.
to their site. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anywho,
Yep. That's the thing. So if y'all didn't notice, Nolan and I could get going. Like he wasn't
Right.
kidding. We literally talked for 4 hours about music.
we did. The first night we met in New Orleans at a conference, we went to dinner with our friend Jessica and 2 or 3 other people and sat there for about 4 hours discussing bands and records and music for the rest of the night.
Then David Neal showed up.
Yes. And
I don't know if we talked about bands when he showed up, but
I don't think we did.
no, I think we went back to tech.
We went back to tech,
Yep.
not because I think David Neal was anti.
No.
But
he's
he's
just
like,
really smart tech guy.
yeah, he's easily one of the best speakers at any conference ever. If anyone, yeah. Pro tip, anyone on the call, there's a guy named David Neal. He's got a big, long, kind of black and white beard. If you see his name at any conference anywhere, go to that session.
Yes.
Doesn't matter what he's talking about, go to that session. You'll get your money's worth from that conference. Go watch David Neal. The dude is fantastic.
Even if I'm speaking at the same time, go
Same.
see David Neal.
Go see David Neal.
Go see David Neal.
Yeah.
You
Go
will
look up.
always walk out inspired.
Yeah. Go look up his talks on YouTube, David Neal presentation, whatever. Doesn't matter what the topic is, just watch it. You'll learn something. At the very, very least, you'll get to see several really good slides that are like illustrations he drew that often have really good dad jokes embedded in the slides in his presentation. So the bare minimum, you'll get some cool illustrations and dad jokes out of the talks, but usually you'll get a stellar presentation as well that sometimes it's topics that he cares so much about it, so deeply of a personal level, he'll actually start weeping a little bit while he's giving the presentation. The dude is super inspiring. Like,
He's one of the best.
yeah.
Absolutely one of the best.
I met him at that conference as well. I never knew of him before.
Yeah.
That New Orleans conference we met at.
I've seen him. I've seen him recently since, but like that was the first time. In fact, I was going through some old pictures, and I have a picture of his slide that says, "No one needs permission to be awesome" or something like that.
Yeah, he had stickers with that on it.
Yeah.
At the conference we were at, and I took a handful of those stickers home and put them on my laptop cases. And unfortunately, I have burned through so many laptops since then that I don't think I have any more of that sticker. But I'm gonna have to look in my archive and see if I still have one. And if I do, I'm putting it on this laptop case just as a reminder of today's conversation and David Neal. And we are certainly babbling a lot and boring the 3 kind souls that are still here watching the Zoom call.
I appreciate you. I appreciate the conversation, Kevin, Noel, Obi. Totally appreciate you all sticking on. If you want, I can offer something. So making this a little bit about ngrok. If you want, I can offer y'all a free professional account for 90 days. If you're interested, let me know.
Yeah, that'd be cool.